this is Plythe Freedman with Treasures of Fort Pierce, and this is called What's Your Story segment. I'm on my way soon to go see Brian Mast and get an exclusive interview with him. He's a decorated veteran. He's also running for Congress on District 18. He's a double amputee, and it's an amazing story. I can't wait for you guys to hear it. And Brian, I want to know, what's your story? Hey, this is Plythe with Treasures of Fort Pierce, and I'm your host for What's Your Story. I have the privilege of being with Brian Mast, who is running for Congress. And Brian, the first thing I want you to do, because I'm sure I will mess this up, you are a decorated vet, and I want you to list all the awards that you have received for being in the military.
Well, I've been blessed to serve with some pretty great people on the battlefield. I would say the most important awards that I've probably received are a Bronze Star Medal, a Purple Heart. The Purple Heart medal is the medal that nobody really ever wants. And I received an Army Commendation Medal for Valor, and I received a medal called the Defense Meritorious Service Medal. I think probably the most important award that I ever received, it wasn't a medal that I put on my chest. It was at a certain point after my service on the battlefield, I was made what they call an honorary member of 1st Ranger Battalion, and that's a group that I served with. And I was told that that was the first time that they had done that since the Battle of Mogadishu, since Somalia. That was probably the best thing I've ever received.
That is so amazing. To me, you are a hero, and the reason I wanted you to say that is because I want to know how you feel when you have to express. You seem very, very humble, and I know you're humble, but when you talk about you are a hero, and how does it feel to be a hero?
I think you're hard pressed to find anybody that serves in the military that's going to walk around, with their chest out in that kind of way. It's not to say we don't put our chest out every now and then, right. But it's just not in us to say, oh, I'm a hero, I do this. We do what we do because of what we believe. We believe that the cause of the United States of America, that our values, that our principles, that our people, that they're worth it, that they're worth our sacrifice, that, if need be, they're worth our life. And that's how we can go out and do what we do without regret. There's several sayings, that go back in the military, but one of them is the phrase quiet professional. And I think that's a very important part about what we do, is that we try to be quiet professionals. We be very professional about what we're doing, and we try not to be boastful about it. And in that, you understand that the moment that you think you're the top dog and nothing's better than you, that's when you're going to get taken down a notch by something in life that's unforeseen. So it also brings me back to one of my favorite songs that's out there playing constantly, and the words are always be humble and kind, always be humble and kind. I think those are important words to remember.
Well, you are a hero, and we need those. We need those to serve our country. Who was your hero growing up?
There's no question my hero was my father. And I hope that I'm the hero for my 2 young boys and the hero for my little girl. But I've told this story to some people before. I learned a very important lesson after I was injured from my father. And it's simply to say that, I learned that I was never too old to be influenced by him, and he was never too old to influence me. After I was injured and I'm laying in a hospital bed in Walter Reed Army Medical Center, and all of my family, they're coming to visit me, they're coming to see me after I woke up, after I was in the intensive care unit. And I can remember the first moment my father came in to see me. And the relationship between my father and I, we love each other, but it's not a relationship where we go around saying we love each other. It's not who we are as men, that we go around saying that. And he came into my hospital room, and the first thing he told me was that he loved me, and he was glad that I was okay. It was very emotional for him, as it was emotional for me as well. And after that, it went back to tough love. And he said something very serious to me. He said, Brian, you can't let this keep you down. You got to find a way to get out there, to pull yourself up, and to get back to work. He said, you can't let your kids see you sitting on your butt regardless of what happened to you, because your kids will think that that's an okay way for them to go through life.
And it's fascinating to me the type of personality that would put their self on the line, not just for your comrades or friends, but you're talking for the whole United States of America. These are people, a lot of people you don't even know, that you're day in and day out, you know that at any moment you could die and leave a family. And that to me is a very interesting personality trait. Why did you want to do that, to risk your limit life?
You know, I think everybody in life, we all find purpose in different things. And I'm not trying to say this as though one purpose is more important than the other. There's some people out there that they want to build the biggest business, and that's an important part of our culture. We all find purpose in different places, and for those of us that are out there on the battlefield, our purpose in life is best found in serving the United States of America. It's just that calling that was inside of us. It's just something that's a little bit different in those of us that put on a uniform, Army, Navy, Marines, Air Force, Coast Guard. We put on that uniform, and that's where our purpose is derived from. We can't help it. It's part of the makeup of who we are. It's part of our DNA. I always tell folks, you know, it's much deeper. Our service, it's much deeper than the uniform that we put on.
Right.
You know, it doesn't stop just because we take off that uniform. That doesn't end what's inside of us. Our ability to go out on the battlefield, give the last beat of our heart, the last breath in our lungs, it's much deeper than what we wear.
I think we need really good leaders that in our country that have done the type of work that you've done. I mean, it just makes sense to me what you're doing running for Congress. Now, what I want to get to really quickly, I want you to tell us what you did in the military, what your job was, and just briefly tell us exactly what happened.
Well, I was a bomb technician, or EOD. EOD stands for Explosive Ordnance Disposal. A lot of people say, oh, is that like the movie The Hurt Locker? And yes, it's like the movie The Hurt Locker. The difference was I was in special operations. So everything that I did as a bomb technician, I didn't do it with one of those big green bomb suits. I didn't do it with robots. I had to do it with my two hands. Because we were working under the cover of darkness, we were moving very light, very fast across the battlefield after very specific targets. The night that I was injured, serving in Afghanistan, we were out. We were headed out onto a mission. It was probably the very wee hours of the morning. We came to a spot on the battlefield where I was leading and clearing the way, and I said, look, if I was a bomber, this spot right here is exactly where I would bury a device, or I would put a tripwire or something like that. So you guys need to, my guys, I said, look, you need to let me check things out. I was working with 2 snipers at that time. I went through everything that I could do to find a device in that area, and I didn't. And ultimately, you know, the mission has to go on.
Right.
So I'm working with these 2 snipers. I gave them the signal that I was going to forge ahead on the battlefield. And as I did that, one of these snipers, they fell into this waterway that was right behind us. And it's not exactly known where I moved to, whether I did move forward as I indicated I was going to do, or whether I stepped back to help that sniper out of the water. But wherever I moved to, I found that device that I thought was there. It detonated beneath my feet, and I remember that very vividly as well. You know, when an explosion goes off like that, it was a complete surprise to me, and it tumbled me through the air, and there was a huge plume of dust, and I'm laying there on the battlefield, and I was dazed and I was confused, and I didn't know exactly what was going on until I could hear through my radio device that was still in my ear. I could hear my men talking about me, and they're saying, EOD is hit, EOD is down. They're radioing this up. And so I'm realizing, okay, they're talking about me. I'm the only EOD on the battlefield. I'm the one that's hit. And right about then, my men, they got to me. They started to render aid to me. That was probably the most painful thing that's ever happened to me, is, you know, them putting tourniquets on what was left of each one of my legs, putting a tourniquet on what was left of my arm, trying to stop me from bleeding out on the battlefield that night. And then they got me onto a stretcher, and they transported me to a medevac helicopter, and they got me off the battlefield. And that's the last thing that I remember until about a week later when I woke up.
Are you surprised that you survived that, knowing how bombs go off? I mean, are you shocked about that?
Well, seeing bombs go off, and unfortunately seeing them go off next to my friends, is something that I was all too familiar with. It's something that unfortunately I was all too familiar with. I've lost a number of friends that triggered improvised explosive devices, IEDs as we call them. Some survive and some don't. And the difference, not to get too much into it, the difference often can be the size of the explosive device, and the difference can be whether it has pieces of fragmentation in it. You know, if some terrorist laces that bomb with nuts and screws and bolts and things that when it blows up, it's going to put so many holes in you that you can't possibly plug every one before that person bleeds out. So I'm very grateful that there wasn't fragmentation in the device that went off. It was simply a blast wave, and that's what took off my legs and took off my finger and did damage to my arm. So I couldn't be more grateful that I'm here. I'll say it in this way. You know, I loved what I was doing in the military. I absolutely loved it. I did it for 12 years. I thought I was going to do it for 20 or 30 years.
Sure.
And you know, I spoke about my father a little bit already, and when I think back to my childhood, one of the greatest things about my childhood was that my father was there for absolutely everything for me, my mother and my father, but every football game, every baseball game, everything. And with the way that my military career was, being in special operations, I was away constantly. You know, every single year, you're home for 3 months, gone for a month, home for a couple weeks, gone for a couple months. It's just the rotation of life all year, every year. I would have missed 3/4 of every single year of life of my kids growing up. And it would have been the greatest regret of my life at the time that I would have got out the military and my kids would have been headed off to university and I missed so much of their life. It would have been hands down my biggest regret. And so I guess if this was the cost to, you know, to have God say, hey, pump the brakes a little bit and, you know, spend some time with your family, then it was absolutely worth it.
Well, that's good that you have such a positive attitude. I was a military wife. We were in 10 years, so I understand when you get out of the military, and it's such an interesting culture, and I loved it. I loved that culture in the military. But when you get out and you start adjusting back into civilian life, you're not only adjusting to civilian life, you're adjusting to a civilian life now with your legs gone, but you're adjusting to that, having a disability. I don't know what you call it, I'm politically correct.
Don't worry about that.
And also now, you've thrown yourself into the spotlight. You were once doing secret missions, people didn't know what you were doing. They probably didn't even know who you were, or, you know, your comrades did. So now you're adjusting to civilian life and the disability and being in the spotlight. Tell us how you're dealing with all that, because being in the spotlight, I know, can be very challenging within itself. So how do you?
Well, the biggest rock has been my wife, Brianna. My wife, Brianna, has been there throughout every single moment of it. She's been that entity in my life that just brings calm and peace and serenity to everything and helps make things flow. She's been incredible.
And I can remember being by myself at times with just the kids. So well, I was going to ask you, what is it that you miss about being in the military?
Like I said, I love the military. Most days, I couldn't believe I was getting paid to do the things that I was doing. I was like a round peg in a round hole. I loved sleeping in the fields. I loved, you know, sleeping on the ground, sometimes not sleeping at all. I loved the time shooting with my friends. You know, I loved the intensity and the purpose of serving on the battlefield. I loved the training that we would go through. I loved jumping out of planes. I loved everything about what we did. But most of all, I loved what I was doing for my country. That's what I loved most. It didn't matter to me whether I was cleaning a toilet or firing my rifle. I was doing it because my country was asking me to do it. And
that's amazing.
It's in that.
Your personality is a thrill seeker. Were you like that as a child?
I think I probably had a few moments in my childhood that certainly put my parents on edge. You know, in the military, it wasn't about thrill seeking though. You know, as much as I say I loved my time in the military, it's important for people to understand. Life in the military, it's fun, but it's not about fun.
Right.
The work that we do is very serious business. We go out onto these battlefields, we're defending our country, we're doing it where the life of those people that to our left and our right is always at risk. It's never an inherently safe job. It's always dangerous. It's very often deadly. And so it's serious work. You know, I spent a career moving across the battlefield where I would carry a letter in my pocket from one of my friends that if anything ever happened to them, I was asked to give it to their family. And other friends that had the same letter for me, that if anything happened to me, they would deliver it to my family. And, you know, we walk around carrying pictures in our pocket or in our helmet of our family members, because it's that one place where you go to work every day where you may not come home. Well, military and law enforcement and fire, other first responders, they're those few places where you go to work and you may not come home soon.
I think as civilians too tend to forget about why they're free and the people that actually are guarding us every day, and we take that for granted. And I thank you for your service and what you've done, and I'm excited that you're moving from this stage to a politician, which is, to me, is very different. I think we need more people that aren't, quote, politicians in our Congress and in our House of Representatives. And so what, if people want to get on your website, where do they go?
If people want to get on my website, it's my name, it's mastforcongress.com, mast like on a sailboat. And, you know, I think what you say, it's very important, you know, about having people take that experience in the military and transition it to serving in public office, because there's no question. I learned the most important things about service. I learned it in the military. Serving. You think of that word, serving, servant, servant. When you're a servant, you know, you're asking first, how can I help? That's the question that you're asking. That's what you learn in the military. And hands down, probably the couple most important lessons would be this. Number one, the best leaders that I had in the military, I can't remember one time where they asked me to do something that they wouldn't do themselves or that they hadn't already done themselves. That's not the way that Washington, D.C. operates. And that can't be the case. That's not being responsible to the people that you're meant to serve. And I guess the other way that I would say I learned something very important is this. It's because of the friends that I lost in service. You know, I wear the names of some of them on my wrist. And to put it into perspective, to date in our theaters of war, I've lost 67 friends. And that number is one that's probably going to continue to grow as we continue to be at war. And the fact is, not one of those friends of mine, they didn't leave this world because they were doing what was best for themselves. Yes. They didn't leave this world because they thought they were going to become rich, famous, important, or get a medal to put on their chest. They left this world because they knew they were doing what was best for our country. And that's the way you serve this country. You do it without regard for gain. And you do it without regard for sacrifice. You do it any other way, you're not doing justice to every hero that's buried in Arlington National Cemetery or some other place because of what they did on the battlefield on behalf of every American.
Being back in civilian life, what's your biggest challenge?
Biggest challenge? Probably expecting that people execute things in the same way that people do in the military. You know, when you're in the military, there's a rank structure, somebody doesn't do something, you know where you fall in that pecking order and that hierarchy, and you know that there's a consequence when you don't get something done. And probably also, you know, in the military, you're just expected to do your job. And you don't expect that you're going to receive all of the praise and accolades for simply doing your job. And that's probably one of the things that you have to get used to, is that, you know, a lot of people, they want to be rewarded for doing their job instead of, you know, getting rewarded for going above and beyond.
Right.
And that's where we in the military, that's where you get award. You do something above and beyond, not for simply doing what you said you would do.
I can remember when we were in the military, and especially we lived in Hawaii at one point, and
tough place to be stationed.
So far away from family, and I had my son there, and my daughter was probably about 5 at the time, and the family wasn't there. The family was the military people that were there. They became your family. Every Christmas, every holiday, you became close very quickly and had such a support system. You need that. You have to have that. And when we came back to the civilian life, it just seemed like I couldn't make the friends as quick, and the support wasn't there. So that was an adjustment on my end, but we're not talking about being it.
I know the experience though. My wife especially relates with that, because you're not out there making these deep-rooted connections with people that you're going to spend your whole life next to. When you're in the military, maybe you get stationed somewhere, but your neighbors are constantly moving in and out, and then eventually you move in and out, and it's not an easy way to go through life, that you never get to put down those roots.
Right. I want to have some fun with you right now, just ask you some really fun questions, like
Fire away.
where was your last vacation?
Last vacation, well, when you live in Florida, when you live in paradise here in the Treasure Coast, you got to find somewhere else to go. So when we vacation, we go down to the Keys. We like to go down to a place called Hawks Cay down in Duck Key. That's our favorite place to go. The kids love it. Brianna and I love it. And that's where we go when we vacation.
All right, what's your pet peeve?
My pet peeve? Oh man, what is my pet peeve? Probably my kids making a mess of the house, which is all day, every day. Like you said, I was a military guy. I had a Foot Locker. Everything was, as they say, dress right dress. Your socks are in a row. Your t-shirts are rolled up. Everything's hung up neatly. And that's probably one of the hard things to turn off, is to understand that kids do not make life look like a military Foot Locker.
What misconceptions do people have about you?
Misconceptions about me? Probably that when you're a soldier, you're just very hard-nosed and just by the book in that way. And I think a lot of people don't realize that those of us in the military, we do wear emotions on our sleeve quite often. We're not people that are void of emotion. People often try to talk about the military and say, oh, they're robots. People that don't really know, they try to say, oh, robots, they make a robot of you, and that's not true.
What is something most people don't know about you?
Most people probably don't know. This is something that my wife knows, and I think my kids probably know it pretty well too, that every morning when I wake up with a song in my head, and it's usually a different song. It could be a country song, it could be a pop song, there's not a rhyme or reason to it, like I heard it the day before. It could be a song I haven't heard for 20 years. I wake up with a song in my head every morning, and I'll be singing it while I'm cleaning up, while I'm brushing my teeth, shaving, everything else. This morning it was Down Home by Alabama. So.
What, you like country?
I do.
You like country, that's your favorite? Okay.
Country music, it's defined by telling a story, really. Most country songs, they're telling a story.
The best stories, though, are stories like you. Triumph, tragedy to triumph, and I think that's great. You have a guilty pleasure TV show that you like?
I don't get to watch any TV. I'm a candidate for Congress, and I barely get to watch the news. My time is spent out on the streets, knocking on doors, out there at meet and greets, talking to people, and then when it's not doing that, it's spending time with my kids, being out on the beach or being out in the grass. If you look around, you're in my house right now. If you look around my house, you'll see we don't have the TV in our living room here, and that's because we just don't watch much of it, and we don't want our kids to watch a lot of it. We'd much rather be outside throwing a ball with them.
And you have 2 boys and a girl?
I have 2 boys and a little girl, 6, 4, and 1. The 2 boys are paying me back for everything that I ever did to my parents. Mom, Dad, I'm sorry for everything I did to you. But the boys are paying me back, so maybe you get solace in that.
Now, how long have you been out since your accident?
So I was injured September 19th, 2010.
Okay.
I spent about the next year and a half recovering, and my official retirement date from the Army was June of 2012. And my family and I, we actually moved back here to the South Florida area in February of 2012.
Okay, so you moved here because your family's here.
My family was not here. My family lives up in Michigan. This area right here where we're at, this was always home away from home for me. This is where my family vacationed for every vacation of my life.
Interesting, okay. Anything else? Do you think you'll have an autobiography or write a book?
I might write a book one day after I'm done making chapters in it.
Yeah.
I think there's been some pretty interesting chapters for me. Mm-hmm. My time in the military, my time, courtship with my wife, my time growing a family, my time serving with the Israeli military, my time recovering. Hopefully my time in Congress before long, and another chapter in how I can help this country, and time doing things with nonprofit organizations. I think I've had the opportunity to come in contact with so many interesting and amazing parts about our country. You know, we talked a little bit before about, you know, being humble and that sort of thing. And I try to be humble and I try to be kind. But I can tell you, as proud as I was of this country when I was overseas serving, I was like a peacock. I mean, I wore America on my chest. I was like a peacock in that way. It doesn't even compare with how proud I am of our country today after coming home and seeing the amazing things that are being done every single day for veterans and service members coming home, for people that just need help in some kind of way. And I had no idea all of that was going on. Today, if my pride was here while I was in the military, it's up here now, because I now get to see and experience everything that this country does.
Well, you're considered a wounded veteran, a wounded soldier. Are you in that organization, or has that organization reached out to you?
There's literally thousands of veteran-centric nonprofit organizations.
Right.
I think what you're looking for is, you know, the Wounded Warrior Project, or we're affectionately called Wounded Warriors.
Okay.
I haven't had much to do with the Wounded Warrior Project. I used to see them around the hospital. People should be so proud of what's going on for veterans coming home. It's amazing.
Well, let's wrap this up, and any final words that you'd like to say really quickly. And we'll also put the information, if you want to learn more about Brian and him running for Congress, we'll have that information up on the website. Any final words?
You know, that we just couldn't be more happy about the way that we've been received from this community, you know, across the Treasure Coast, the friends that we've made since returning home from military service, people that have just taken us in as though we were those people that have been here our entire life, and not somebody that was off, you know, out in the military. And we couldn't thank the community enough for the way that they've taken us in. Thank you.
I appreciate it. This has been a pleasure. Thank you, Brian, for telling us what your story is, and I'll have people we'll have the information, how they can get on your website and learn more about you. Your website is full of information with your platforms and what you believe and what you're going to fight for and serve again for us, and including Israel and veterans and the lagoon. And what's one that I've missed?
Well, you pointed to a lot of it.
Okay.
Accountability with the dollars we
Yes.
send to Washington, D.C., accountability to our service members on the battlefield, making sure that they have the resources that they need, accountability to them when they come home and they're serviced by the VA,
Great.
accountability to our ecosystem and our beautiful community that we have. You know, we have water and weather. That's why people live here, and
Yes.
we got to take care of it.
It's a national treasure for sure. Thank you for being on What's Your Story.